somewhere deep inside every atom in your body, beyond the quiet architecture of molecules and beneath the restless dance of chemistry, there exists something so strange that even modern physics struggles to describe it properly. It is smaller than anything you could ever see, smaller than a nucleus, smaller than the tiny quarks hidden inside protons, and yet this mysterious thing shapes almost every physical experience you have ever known. It allows atoms to bind together, creates light, creates electricity. It gives rise to chemistry, memory, stars, oceans, breathing, and life itself. And tonight, we are going to confront one unsettling question about it. What if this thing, the electron, does not actually have a size at all? If you watched our earlier journey into the strange silence hidden inside atoms, where we explored how matter is made mostly of empty space, then tonight's mystery drifts even deeper into that darkness. Because now we are no longer asking what fills the atom. We are asking whether one of the universe's most important building blocks even occupies space in the way we imagine. Welcome to Velarin's Sleepy Space Mysteries, where tonight we slowly descend into the quantum world, into the strange edge where human intuition begins to dissolve. Before we begin, take a quiet moment to like the video, subscribe if you enjoy these cosmic explorations, turn on notifications so you do not miss future journeys into the unknown, and if you wish to support the channel further, you can also join our membership community traveling together through the deeper mysteries of the universe. And as always, tell me softly in the comments below, where in the world are you watching from tonight? Now, settle in comfortably, perhaps beneath dim light or under the quiet hum of midnight, because this story begins more than a century ago, when physicists first discovered the electron and believed they understood what it was. In those early days, the electron seemed simple, a tiny particle, a minuscule little sphere orbiting the nucleus like a planet around a sun. Textbooks drew it as a small ball because that was how humans understood reality. Everything real had shape. Everything physical occupied space. A grain of sand had size. A raindrop had size. Even atoms, once measured carefully, revealed a kind of fuzzy diameter. So naturally, the electron had to possess one too. But then the experiments began, and the deeper scientists looked, the stranger the electron became. They smashed particles together at enormous speeds. They built gigantic machines buried underground. They measured magnetic fields so delicately that even the smallest quantum fluctuations became visible. Again and again, the electron revealed its properties with astonishing precision. It had mass, it had charge, it had spin. It responded to electromagnetic fields perfectly. And yet one thing remained disturbingly absent. No surface, no internal structure, no measurable radius. Every experiment returned the same impossible answer. The electron behaved as though it were a perfect mathematical point. Not merely tiny, not unimaginably small, but potentially dimensionless. And if that is true, then something extraordinary sits hidden inside every atom around you tonight. something physically real that may not occupy space in the way objects are supposed to. A thing with influence but perhaps no size. A presence without extension. The deeper physicists explored this mystery, the more reality itself seemed to soften around the edges. Because if an electron can exist without measurable size, then perhaps the universe is not built from little objects at all. Perhaps matter is something stranger, something more fluid, something woven from invisible fields trembling beneath space itself. And as we slowly travel deeper into this mystery tonight, we will discover how the electron shattered the old mechanical picture of reality and opened the doorway into the quantum universe. A place where particles behave like waves, where empty space is never truly empty, and where existence itself becomes difficult to define with ordinary language. First, none of this seemed alarming. When the electron was discovered near the end of the 19th century, physicists believed they were simply uncovering another tiny component of matter, another miniature object hidden beneath the visible world. The universe, after all, already appeared mechanical. Planets orbited stars. Cannonballs flew through the air. Clocks ticked with precise gears and springs. Reality looked solid, predictable, and beautifully structured. So when scientists imagined electrons moving inside atoms, they naturally pictured tiny particles behaving like microscopic planets. The image felt comforting because it resembled the familiar world. Small balls circling a center. Tiny solar systems hidden inside matter itself. And for a while, this picture seemed to work well enough. It explained certain observations. It gave students a visual way to imagine atoms. Even now, more than a century later, most people still carry this image in their minds without realizing how incomplete it truly is. But nature was already whispering warnings beneath the surface. Quiet contradictions began to emerge almost immediately. One of the first mysteries appeared when physicists tried to calculate the actual size of the electron using classical physics. The reasoning sounded perfectly logical at the time. The electron possessed electric charge, and electric charge creates an electric field spreading outward through space. That field contains energy, and according to Einstein, energy and mass are deeply connected. So scientists assumed the electron's mass might come entirely from the energy stored inside its own electric field. If that were true, then by calculating how much energy existed around the electron, they could estimate its radius. The mathematics produced a number. Incredibly tiny, far smaller than an atom, but still finite. A minuscule sphere suspended inside reality. For a brief moment, it seemed the mystery had been solved. Yet hidden inside the calculation was a devastating problem. If the electron truly were a tiny sphere filled with negative charge, then every part of that charge would repel every other part. Negative charges push away from one another. That is one of the most basic behaviors in electromagnetism. So what was preventing the electron from tearing itself apart? What invisible force was holding this tiny charged sphere together against its own internal repulsion? Physicists invented hypothetical solutions, mysterious internal pressures that might stabilize the electron, but no experiment ever found evidence for such forces. The more carefully scientists examined the idea, the more artificial it felt, like patching cracks in a theory that was quietly collapsing underneath its own assumptions. And then the opposite possibility became even stranger. If the electron was not a tiny sphere, perhaps it was a true point with absolutely no size at all. But this created another nightmare. A point-like charge would generate an electric field so intense at its exact location that the energy would become infinite. Infinite energy would imply infinite mass. Yet the electron clearly did not possess infinite mass. It had a perfectly measurable value. Tiny, stable, consistent across every experiment ever performed. Reality seemed trapped between two impossible descriptions. If the electron had size, the physics failed. If it lacked size, the mathematics exploded into infinities. This was not merely a technical inconvenience hidden inside equations. It was something far deeper. The entire classical understanding of physical objects was beginning to fracture. Because in ordinary life, everything real occupies space. Every object you have ever touched possesses dimensions. A mountain stretches across the horizon. A grain of sand occupies a tiny but measurable volume. Even microscopic organisms contain boundaries separating them from the surrounding world. Existence itself appears inseparable from extension through space. To exist means to be somewhere, to have shape, to possess size, but the electron refused to cooperate with this intuition. And that refusal carried enormous philosophical weight, because the electron was not some obscure theoretical curiosity hidden in distant laboratories. Electrons were everywhere. Every atom around you tonight contains them. Every sensation moving through your nervous system depends on their motion. Every color your eyes perceive comes from electrons absorbing and emitting light. The solidity of your hands, the chemistry of your brain, the electrical storms inside your heart, all of it emerges from the behavior of electrons. Something possibly dimensionless was participating in every structure of the material universe. The deeper physicists looked, the stranger the situation became. Atoms themselves already challenged ordinary intuition. Unlike little solar systems drawn in textbooks, real atoms do not possess sharply defined edges. The electrons surrounding the nucleus exist more like diffuse probability clouds, blurred distributions describing where the electron might appear if measured. The atom has a characteristic size, yes, but that size is fuzzy, more like a soft mist than a hard boundary. Still, even in this strange quantum picture, the atom occupies space. The nucleus occupies space. Protons and neutrons possess measurable radii. Scientists eventually discovered that protons themselves contain smaller particles called quarks moving chaotically inside them. The proton's size emerges from that internal structure. But the electron revealed nothing similar. No smaller components, no hidden interior, no detectable surface. Every attempt to probe deeper returned the same haunting answer. The electron behaved as though it were fundamental, not built from anything smaller, not composed of parts arranged through space, just a pure excitation carrying mass, charge, and spin without internal architecture. And slowly, physicists began realizing that perhaps the problem was not the electron itself. Perhaps the problem was human intuition. By the early 20th century, physics had entered a strange twilight period where the old mechanical picture of reality still appeared intact on the surface, yet deep underneath, invisible fractures were spreading everywhere. The electron sat directly at the center of those fractures. It behaved unlike anything humans had ever encountered before. Classical physics, the system that described falling apples, planetary motion, and steam engines with extraordinary accuracy, suddenly seemed unable to describe one of the most fundamental ingredients of matter itself. And perhaps the strangest part was that the electron did not fail dramatically. Failed quietly, subtly, like a familiar landscape slowly dissolving into mist as night falls. The first major crack appeared when physicists realized electrons could not orbit the atomic nucleus the way planets orbit the sun. At first glance, the analogy felt perfect. A dense center surrounded by smaller objects moving around it. Simple, elegant, intuitive. But according to classical electromagnetism, any charged particle accelerating through space should continuously radiate energy. An electron moving in a circular orbit is constantly changing direction, which means it is accelerating. And if it radiates energy, then it must gradually lose speed and spiral inward toward the nucleus. The atom should collapse almost instantly. Matter itself should be unstable. Every object in the universe should disintegrate as electrons crash into nuclei in a tiny fraction of a second. Yet reality clearly refused to obey this prediction. Atoms were stable. Rocks remained solid. Stars continued burning. Human beings existed. The old equations were not merely incomplete. They were fundamentally incapable of describing the microscopic world. And so physics entered its great transformation. Slowly, reluctantly, scientists began abandoning the comforting assumptions that had guided human thought for centuries. The universe at small scales was not mechanical in the ordinary sense. Particles did not move like miniature cannonballs. Electrons did not possess perfectly defined trajectories. Reality itself seemed to blur whenever anyone tried to examine it too closely. The more precisely physicists attempted to locate an electron, the less precisely they could determine its motion. The more precisely they measured momentum, the more uncertain position became. This strange limitation was not caused by poor instruments or human error. It appeared woven directly into the fabric of nature itself. This became known as the uncertainty principle. And once uncertainty entered physics, the entire concept of what an electron actually was began changing forever. Instead of imagining the electron as a tiny object following a clear path around the nucleus, quantum mechanics described it using something called a wave function, a strange mathematical structure encoding probabilities rather than certainties. The electron no longer occupied one exact location before measurement. Instead, it existed as a spread-out cloud of possibilities. Not a little sphere orbiting like a planet, but something softer, stranger, less object-like. A haze of potential presence distributed through space until an interaction forced reality into a specific outcome. This idea disturbed even the founders of quantum theory themselves. Albert Einstein famously resisted it for the rest of his life because it seemed to replace concrete physical reality with probabilities and abstraction. But experiment after experiment confirmed the quantum picture with terrifying precision. Electrons behaved like waves when passing through tiny slits, creating interference patterns like ripples crossing a pond. Yet moments later, those same electrons could strike a detector as localized impacts resembling particles. The electron appeared capable of behaving as both wave and particle depending on how reality was observed. And this duality deepened the mystery of scale even further. Because what exactly possesses size in such a situation? Particle has dimensions. A wave extends through space. But the electrons seem to drift somewhere between both categories, refusing to fit comfortably into either. Whenever physicists tried forcing the electron back into familiar language, contradictions emerged again. The old intuition kept breaking apart. Imagine sitting quietly beside a dark ocean at night. You cannot see the water clearly, only the faint movement of waves beneath moonlight. Now imagine trying to isolate a single wave and ask where exactly it begins and ends. The question itself becomes slippery. The wave is real, carries energy. It moves. It interacts with the shoreline. Yet it is not an object separated cleanly from the ocean around it. It is a temporary pattern emerging within something larger. The electron was beginning to resemble something like that. Not a miniature ball hidden inside atoms, but a strange excitation emerging from deeper layers of reality. And while these ideas already sounded unsettling, the experiments probing the electron would soon become even more extraordinary. Physicists developed increasingly powerful ways to investigate matter at unimaginably tiny scales. They discovered that seeing something directly was unnecessary. Instead, they could study invisible structures through scattering experiments, firing particles at targets and analyzing how those particles deflected afterward. It was like exploring a dark room by throwing pebbles and listening to the echoes. These experiments transformed physics forever. When scientists scattered particles off atomic nuclei, they uncovered dense central cores hidden inside atoms. When they scattered particles off protons, they discovered quarks buried within. Structure revealed itself through patterns. Internal complexity always left fingerprints. But when they turned these methods toward the electron, the fingerprints vanished completely. No hidden layers appeared. No internal machinery emerged. No measurable radius revealed itself. The electron remained stubbornly featureless no matter how closely anyone looked. And this became deeply unsettling for another reason. Human beings evolved to understand reality through surfaces and boundaries. Everything we touch possesses edges separating it from the world around it. Our brains instinctively assume that physical existence requires extension through space. Yet the electron challenged this ancient intuition at its foundation. It behaved like something physically real without behaving like an object in the ordinary sense at all. And perhaps that is why the electron feels so haunting even today. Not because it is merely small, but because it quietly suggests that the deepest layers of reality may not resemble objects at all. They may resemble patterns, vibrations, excitations emerging from invisible fields beneath space itself. And soon physicists would discover exactly that. The transition from classical particles to quantum fields did not happen all at once. It unfolded gradually, like humanity wandering deeper into fog, where familiar shapes slowly lost their edges. At first, physicists still tried holding onto the idea that particles were tiny objects hidden somewhere beneath the mathematics. Perhaps the strange wave behavior was only a temporary illusion. Perhaps the electron still possessed a small hidden structure waiting to be discovered by more powerful experiments. But decade after decade, every deeper investigation pushed reality further away from ordinary intuition rather than back toward it. The key breakthrough came when physicists realized that empty space itself was not truly empty. This was one of the most profound discoveries in all of modern science, and yet it remains strangely absent from everyday imagination. Most people still picture the vacuum as simple nothingness, an absence where absolutely nothing exists. Stop carrying what only God can carry. Let your heart finally rest. Father, I ask you right now to touch every troubled mind listening to this prayer. Let peace flow into every restless thought. Let your Holy Spirit calm every racing emotion. I rebuke panic attacks, fear, torment, and sleeplessness in the mighty name of Jesus. Lord, replace fear with faith. Replace heaviness with comfort. Replace exhaustion with supernatural rest. Let your angels stand guard around every listener tonight. Protect their homes. Protect their families. Protect their minds and hearts while they sleep. And Lord, for the person listening tonight who feels hopeless, remind them that their story is not over. Remind them that you are still writing miracles. My child, one of the enemy's greatest weapons is convincing people that nothing will ever change. But the Word of God tells us something different. Scripture says weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. That means this painful season is not permanent. This heavy night is not forever. God is still able to restore what was broken. He is still able to heal what was wounded. He is still able to open doors that seemed impossible to open. And while you sleep tonight, heaven is still moving on your behalf. There are prayers being answered that you cannot yet see. There are battles God is fighting behind the scenes. There are blessings already on their way toward your life. So breathe deeply again now. Let your body relax even more. Feel the peace of God filling the atmosphere around you. Imagine the loving presence of Jesus sitting beside your bed tonight, reminding you softly that you are safe, you are loved, and you are never alone. He has carried you through every difficult season before, and He will carry you through this one too. Psalm 23 says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." A shepherd stays close to the sheep. A shepherd protects, guides, comforts, and watches over the flock through the night. And tonight, Jesus Christ is still your shepherd. He is watching over you while you rest. He is guarding your soul while you sleep. He is preparing strength for tomorrow even before the sun rises. So let your eyes grow heavy now. Let the stress of the day finally leave your body. Let your spirit settle quietly in the loving care of God. And if you are still listening tonight, type 4 in the comments below as a sign that you are trusting the shepherd to lead you through every valley and every storm. Let your comment become a declaration of faith before heaven. And now, my beloved child, continue resting peacefully as the Lord surrounds you with His unfailing love and carries you gently into deep and holy sleep tonight. My precious child, tonight I want you to remember that the God who watches over you never grows tired, never becomes distracted, and never stops loving you. Human strength may fail. Friends may not always understand your pain. Even your own heart may sometimes feel overwhelmed and weary. But the Lord remains faithful through every season of your life. He has walked beside you through moments when you did not even realize He was carrying you. And tonight, in this quiet and sacred moment, He is inviting you to lay down every burden and simply rest in His presence. So take another slow breath now. Let your heartbeat settle. Let your thoughts become quieter. Imagine the gentle peace of heaven surrounding your room like warm light in the darkness. The Bible says in Psalm 121, "I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord." My child, your help is not coming from the world. Your hope is not built on circumstances. Your peace does not depend on whether tomorrow goes perfectly. Your help comes from the Lord Himself, the Creator of heaven and earth, the one who holds every detail of your life in His hands. Father in heaven, I pray right now over every soul listening to this prayer tonight. Lord, many of your children have been fighting invisible battles. Some are smiling on the outside while silently breaking on the inside. Some are exhausted from trying to stay strong. Some are carrying fears about finances, relationships, sickness, loneliness, or uncertainty about the future. But Lord, you are still the great shepherd who cares for every sheep in the flock. You are still the healer of broken hearts. You are still the refuge for the weary soul. So tonight, Father, let your peace descend into every room listening to this prayer. Let anxiety lose its power. Let fear loosen its grip. It means physicists can predict the behavior of the electron so accurately that the difference between theory and experiment becomes smaller than many effects caused by imperfections in the measuring devices themselves. No other scientific theory in history has achieved such extraordinary agreement with reality. And all of it depends on treating the electron as fundamentally point-like. No internal gears, no hidden layers, no tiny spinning sphere, just a quantum excitation interacting with invisible fields permeating spacetime itself. The old image of the electron orbiting like a tiny planet around the nucleus now seemed almost childlike compared to this deeper reality. The universe beneath ordinary matter was no longer mechanical. It had become fluid, dynamic, probabilistic, woven from fields and fluctuations rather than miniature objects colliding through empty space. And still, one haunting question remained unresolved. If the electron is truly point-like, if it may possess no measurable size at all, then what exactly does it mean for something to physically exist? Because everything in human experience tells us that existence requires boundaries. Yet the electron continued whispering otherwise. Perhaps the strangest thing about the electron is not that it lacks measurable size, but that the universe seems perfectly comfortable with this fact while the human mind is not. Deep inside us, there remains a persistent instinct insisting that something real must occupy space in a familiar way. We evolved in a world of stones, rivers, trees, storms, and bodies. Every object surrounding our ancestors possessed surfaces and boundaries. Reality appeared tangible because it resisted overlap. You could hold a branch because its atoms pushed against your skin. You could walk across the ground because matter excluded other matter from occupying the same space. Size and solidity became inseparable from our understanding of existence itself. And yet, the deeper physics descends beneath ordinary experience, the more these intuitions begin to unravel. The electron quietly reveals that the universe may not be constructed from tiny solid pieces at all. Instead, solidity itself may emerge from interactions between invisible quantum fields. What feels hard and physical in daily life is not actually solid in the classical sense. Atoms are mostly empty space. Their nuclei are astonishingly small compared to the vast probability clouds surrounding them. And the electrons inhabiting those clouds may not possess measurable surfaces whatsoever. The apparent solidity of matter comes from quantum rules preventing electrons from collapsing into the same states, combined with electromagnetic repulsion between fields. The world feels solid not because matter is packed tightly together like microscopic bricks, but because invisible quantum behaviors generate resistance whenever particles interact. In a sense, your hand passes over a table without ever truly touching it in the classical way people imagine. The electrons within your skin repel the electrons within the wood long before atomic nuclei approach one another closely. Beneath ordinary sensation lies a silent dance of fields exchanging photons across tiny distances. The physical world is less like collections of miniature stones and more like overlapping vibrations maintaining structured relationships. This realization changes the meaning of scale itself. When people ask how large an electron is, they are unconsciously imagining the wrong kind of question. They imagine a hidden object waiting to be measured with a sufficiently advanced ruler. But quantum reality does not seem built from little hidden marbles scattered through empty space. The electron does not resemble a miniature baseball too small for current instruments to resolve. Everything modern physics has uncovered points toward a deeper truth. The electron behaves more like an irreducible feature of reality itself, a fundamental excitation whose properties emerge through interactions rather than internal structure. And still, the universe leaves room for mystery, because even though experiments show no detectable size down to extraordinarily tiny scales, science cannot definitively prove the electron is truly dimensionless, can only establish limits. Current experiments reveal no structure down to distances far smaller than the nucleus of an atom, but below those scales remains an enormous unexplored abyss. There may still exist hidden physics buried beneath our current ability to observe. Some theoretical ideas suggest that at unbelievably tiny distances, far beyond present experiments, the electron may not be point-like after all. In string theory, for example, fundamental particles are envisioned not as points but as unimaginably small vibrating strings of energy. Different vibrations create different particles, almost like musical notes emerging from the same cosmic instrument. In that framework, the electron would possess a minute extent, but so incredibly small that no existing accelerator could possibly detect it. The scale involved would be close to the Planck length, a distance so tiny that comparing it to an atom is like comparing an atom to an entire galaxy. And here the imagination begins to fail entirely. Human intuition struggles even to emotionally process such scales. We can say the words, but the mind cannot truly visualize them. The electron already exists far beneath ordinary comprehension. If hidden structure exists beneath that level, then reality may descend through layers of scale almost infinitely beyond direct experience. Yet, regardless of whether future physics eventually reveals deeper substructure, one fact remains extraordinary. Within every experimental boundary humanity has reached so far, the electron behaves exactly like a point-like quantum excitation. The equations describing it have become among the most successful predictions ever achieved in science. Technologies shaping modern civilization, from electronics to lasers to medical imaging, all depend on those equations working with astonishing precision. The strange quantum description of the electron is not philosophical speculation detached from reality. It is one of the most tested frameworks ever created by the human species. And perhaps that is what makes the electron so beautiful. It reminds us that reality is under no obligation to resemble common sense. Nature does not arrange itself according to the habits of the human nervous system. Evolution shaped our brains to survive on the savannas of Earth, not to intuitively understand quantum fields hidden beneath spacetime. The universe at its deepest levels may be stranger than ordinary language can comfortably express. Not because reality is irrational, but because our intuitions were built for sunlight, predators, weather, and physical survival, not for comprehending the microscopic architecture of existence. The electron became one of the first great warnings about this limitation. It marked the moment when humanity discovered that beneath the familiar world existed another layer entirely, one where certainty dissolves into probabilities, where empty space hums with invisible fluctuations, where particles emerge from fields, and where the meaning of size itself becomes uncertain. The old mechanical universe of tiny gears and rigid objects faded away, replaced by something softer, more abstract, yet somehow even more profound. And tonight, as you sit quietly listening beneath dim light or drifting towards sleep, it is worth pausing for a moment to consider what this truly means. Every sensation inside your body, every memory, every thought unfolding silently in your mind right now depends on electrons. Tiny quantum excitations with no detectable surface are participating in the chemistry of your consciousness itself. Something that may not truly occupy space in the classical sense is helping create your experience of reality. And perhaps that is the deepest mystery of all. Long before humans understood quantum fields or virtual particles, there was already something haunting hidden inside the night sky itself. Every star shining above ancient civilizations depended on electrons. Every flicker of firelight illuminating forgotten caves depended on electrons. Every atom drifting through interstellar space carried them silently within its structure. For billions of years before physics existed, the universe had already been built upon this strange quantum foundation. Yet only in the 20th century did humanity finally begin realizing how alien that foundation truly was. And perhaps nowhere did this realization become more dramatic than inside the giant particle accelerators built deep beneath Earth. These machines were not merely technological achievements. In many ways, they became modern cathedrals dedicated to exploring the invisible architecture of existence. Enormous tunnels stretching for kilometers underground, superconducting magnets colder than outer space, beams of particles accelerated to velocities unimaginably close to the speed of light, all constructed for one purpose: to probe deeper into matter than any generation before had ever managed. The logic behind these experiments was elegant in its simplicity. If you wish to study something too small to see directly, you can scatter particles off it and analyze the aftermath. Like echolocation in darkness. Like hearing the shape of a hidden canyon through echoes. The smaller the structure you wish to probe, the shorter the wavelength required. And shorter wavelengths demand higher energies. So physicists pushed particles faster and faster, compressing their wavelengths smaller and smaller, attempting to illuminate the hidden scales beneath matter. Again and again, this strategy revealed new layers of reality. Atoms gave way to nuclei. Nuclei gave way to protons and neutrons. Protons gave way to quarks and gluons. At every previous stage, deeper probing uncovered internal structure waiting beneath the surface. The universe seemed organized like nested layers inside layers, each scale hiding another beneath it. Naturally, physicists expected the electron would eventually reveal something similar. perhaps smaller constituents, tiny internal motions, some measurable radius exposing a deeper architecture. But the electron remained silent. Even when experiments reached energies so enormous they bordered on the unimaginable, the electron continued behaving like a perfect point. No hidden components emerged from the data. No scattering patterns hinted at internal dimensions. The electron behaved as though all interactions occurred at a single infinitesimal location in spacetime itself. This result became increasingly unsettling as technology advanced, because the scales involved were no longer merely small. They entered territories almost impossible for the human brain to emotionally grasp. Consider a single atom. If an atom were expanded to the size of a massive cathedral, its nucleus would still be only a tiny grain near the center. The electron cloud would stretch outward through vast empty regions. Now imagine shrinking further still, descending thousands of times below even the scale of the nucleus. That is roughly the territory modern experiments have explored while searching for electron structure. And still nothing appeared. No edge, no surface, no size. At some point, physicists had to confront a difficult possibility. Maybe the electron was not hiding structure beneath our measurements. Maybe structure itself simply ended there. This idea carried enormous implications because the electron was not alone. Quarks also appeared point-like. Certain other fundamental particles behaved similarly, and together they suggested a profound division within nature itself. Composite objects possess size because they contain internal arrangements spread through space. A proton has measurable dimensions because quarks move dynamically within it. A nucleus has dimensions because protons and neutrons occupy a finite region. But truly fundamental entities may not possess classical size at all because there are no smaller components inside them to create extension. In other words, size may emerge from structure. Without internal structure, the ordinary concept of size begins dissolving completely. And this realization changes the emotional landscape of physics in a subtle but profound way. It means the deepest layers of reality may not resemble little objects nested endlessly within smaller objects. Instead, there may exist a boundary where the very language of physical dimensions stops functioning normally. The electron sits directly on that boundary like a quiet doorway between the familiar world and something stranger beneath it. Yet, even while appearing point-like, the electron still produces effects extending across space. Its electric field stretches outward indefinitely. Its quantum interactions shape atoms across measurable distances. The electron influences reality far beyond any possible location it may occupy. And this creates another beautiful paradox. The electron may possess no measurable size, yet its influence fills the universe. In some sense, the electron is simultaneously nowhere and everywhere. Its measurable interactions extend outward through fields. Its quantum wave function spreads through probabilities. Its virtual particle cloud fluctuates continuously around it. The electron cannot be reduced to a tiny marble hidden at a specific coordinate because quantum reality itself refuses such simplistic pictures. Instead, what we call the electron becomes a layered combination of field excitation, probability distribution, interaction potential, and quantum fluctuations all woven together inseparably. And remarkably, this strange description works. Not approximately, not philosophically, precisely. Modern electronics function because quantum mechanics predicts electron behavior correctly. Lasers work because electrons transition between quantized energy states exactly as theory describes. Semiconductors, computers, magnetic resonance imaging, solar panels, fiber optics, and nearly all advanced technology depend directly on the quantum nature of electrons. Humanity has built an entire civilization upon equations describing entities that no longer resemble classical objects at all. That may be one of the strangest truths in science. Our daily lives depend upon a deeper reality that human intuition cannot naturally visualize. And still, beneath all this extraordinary success, the mystery quietly remains unresolved. Because although quantum field theory describes the electron with astonishing accuracy, it does not necessarily answer every philosophical question hidden beneath the mathematics. Why should fundamental reality emerge through fields? Why do these fields exist at all? Why does a point like excitation possess mass and charge? And perhaps most hauntingly, why should existence itself become less object-like the deeper we descend into the structure of the universe? The electron does not simply challenge physics. It challenges the ancient human assumption that reality must ultimately be made from things. And in the silence beneath that assumption, an even deeper mystery begins waiting. One of the quietest but most extraordinary discoveries in modern physics is that the vacuum of space is not silent. Beneath the apparent emptiness between stars, beneath the darkness stretching across intergalactic distances, something restless continues unfolding at every moment. Quantum fields fluctuate endlessly. Virtual particles emerge and vanish faster than ordinary thought can comfortably imagine. Empty space itself behaves less like nothingness and more like an invisible ocean trembling beneath reality. And nowhere does this become more important than around the electron. To understand why, we need to return briefly to a question that haunted physics from the very beginning. If the electron is truly point-like, then why does it possess measurable mass and charge at all? A mathematical point should not behave like an ordinary object. Yet the electron undeniably influences the world around it. It bends electromagnetic fields. It participates in chemistry. It responds to forces. Somehow, this apparently dimensionless excitation leaves fingerprints across the entire material universe. Quantum field theory answered this mystery in a surprisingly subtle way. The electron we observe in experiments is not merely the bare excitation itself. Instead, it is inseparable from the quantum activity surrounding it. As the electron moves through space, it constantly interacts with the fluctuating vacuum around it. Virtual photons flicker into existence and vanish again. Virtual particle-antiparticle pairs briefly emerge near the electron before annihilating almost immediately. These processes happen continuously, endlessly, invisibly. The electron becomes wrapped inside a cloud of quantum interactions extending outward through space. And this cloud changes measurable reality. Physicists sometimes distinguish between what they call the bare electron and the dressed electron. The bare electron is a kind of theoretical abstraction, the underlying point-like excitation stripped of all surrounding quantum effects. But no experiment has ever directly observed such an isolated object. Every real electron existing in nature is dressed by the vacuum fluctuations surrounding it. Every measurement humanity has ever performed interacts not with a naked point, but with a dynamic quantum entity immersed inside invisible fields. This idea sounds abstract at first, but its consequences are astonishingly real. For example, the effective electric charge of the electron changes depending on how closely you probe it. From farther distances, the surrounding cloud of virtual particles partially screens the electron's charge, softening its observable influence slightly. But when experiments probe closer and closer, penetrating deeper through the quantum cloud, more of the underlying charge becomes visible. The electron appears subtly different depending on the scale at which reality examines it. This phenomenon is called the running of the coupling constant, though the name hardly captures its beauty. In simple terms, nature itself behaves differently at different scales. The deeper we descend into reality, the more the underlying interactions transform. Physics is not static beneath the surface. It flows, and perhaps that is one reason the universe feels so mysterious. Human beings instinctively imagine reality as fixed, stable, composed of permanent objects with definite properties. But quantum fields reveal something far more fluid. Properties emerge relationally through interactions. The electron does not simply possess charge in isolation like a painted label attached to a tiny sphere. Charge manifests dynamically through the behavior of fields interacting across scales. Even mass itself becomes strange in this framework. In ordinary intuition, mass feels like an intrinsic substance, something contained physically inside an object. But quantum field theory suggests the measured mass of the electron partly reflects the energy of its interactions with surrounding fields and fluctuations. The electron is not a static bead of matter carrying prepackaged properties. It is a living process unfolding continuously through quantum relationships. And despite how surreal this sounds, experiments confirm these ideas with extraordinary precision. Among the greatest triumphs in all of science is the prediction of the electron's magnetic behavior. Because the electron possesses spin, it acts somewhat like a tiny magnet. But quantum fluctuations surrounding the electron alter this magnetic property slightly. Physicists calculate these corrections through unimaginably complex mathematics involving countless quantum interactions occurring inside the vacuum itself. The result is breathtaking. The theoretical predictions match experimental measurements to more than 10 decimal places. Few human achievements demonstrate the power of abstract thought so dramatically. Tiny fluctuations hidden beneath empty space, invisible to ordinary perception, alter the electron's properties in measurable ways predicted with astonishing accuracy by equations written on paper decades earlier. And yet, hidden beneath this success, another mystery quietly persists, because quantum field theory still struggles with infinities. Whenever physicists calculate certain properties of a point-like electron directly, the equations tend to explode toward infinite values. Infinite self-energy, infinite corrections, infinite quantities emerging from interactions occurring at infinitely small distances. To manage these infinities, physicists developed a mathematical procedure called renormalization, one of the strangest yet most successful techniques in theoretical science. In essence, renormalization carefully absorbs the infinities into measurable quantities like mass and charge, allowing finite predictions to emerge. The procedure works astonishingly well. It produces results matching reality with unparalleled precision. Yet philosophically, many physicists remain uneasy about it. Some suspect the infinities hint that quantum field theory itself may not be the final description of nature. Perhaps beneath current physics lies another deeper framework waiting to be discovered. This possibility opens enormous unknown territory beneath the electron. Maybe the electron truly is point-like all the way down forever. Or perhaps hidden structure emerges at scales far beyond current experiments, buried inside distances so tiny that human technology may not reach them for centuries, if ever. The known universe still contains immense, unexplored regions of scale beneath our current understanding. And this uncertainty gives the electron an almost mythic quality within physics. It is both one of the most understood entities in science and one of the most philosophically mysterious. We can predict its behavior with incredible precision while still struggling to describe what it ultimately is in ordinary language. Every deeper layer of understanding seems to move reality further away from common intuition rather than closer to it. The electron began as a tiny particle orbiting atomic nuclei in textbook diagrams. But slowly, across generations of experiments and theory, it transformed into something else entirely. A ripple in a universal field. A quantum excitation surrounded by fluctuating vacuum activity. A point-like entity with measurable influence but no detectable surface. The hand of God holding your hand in the darkness. The creator of heaven standing beside your bed whispering, "Do not fear, I am here." What greater comfort could there be than that? Father, I pray now for supernatural protection over every listener tonight. Cover this home with your presence. Let your angels stand watch through every hour of the night. Guard their minds from torment. Guard their sleep from nightmares. Guard their hearts from fear. Let no darkness come near this place because the light of Jesus Christ shines here tonight. My child, sometimes healing begins not when circumstances immediately change, but when the soul finally learns to rest in God again. Rest is an act of faith. Sleep becomes worship when you trust the Lord enough to close your eyes knowing He will continue carrying you through the night. So let your body relax completely now. Let your breathing become slower and calmer. Feel the peace of God settling gently over your chest. Feel His love surrounding this room like a warm blanket in the stillness of the night. You are not abandoned. You are not forgotten. You are deeply loved by the Father. And even now, while your eyes grow heavy, heaven is still watching over you with perfect care. Psalm 4 verse 8 says, I will both lay me down in peace and sleep, for thou, Lord, only makest me dwell in safety. Tonight that promise belongs to you. You can sleep safely because the Lord Himself is guarding your life. And if you are still listening tonight, type 10 in the comments below as a declaration that you are trusting God to watch over you while you rest. Let your comment become a testimony of faith and surrender before heaven. And now, beloved child, continue drifting deeper into peaceful sleep as the gentle presence of God surrounds your soul and carries you safely through this night. My precious child, tonight as the quietness of the night settles around you and the world slowly grows still, I want you to remember that there is nowhere you can go where the presence of God cannot reach you. Even here in this silent moment, while you lie in bed listening softly to these words, the Lord is near. He is not distant from your pain. He is not unaware of your fears. He sees every burden hidden deep inside your heart. And tonight He is gently inviting you to rest beneath the shelter of His love. The Bible says in Psalm 91, He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. My child, tonight let this room become that secret place. Let your bed become a place of surrender. Let your tired mind finally rest under the shadow of God's protection. You have carried enough today. You have worried enough today. You have fought enough battles today. Now it is time to rest in the hands of the Father. So breathe deeply now. Slowly inhale peace. Slowly exhale every fear. Let your body become heavier with rest. Let your spirit become quieter before the Lord. Father in heaven, I pray right now over every listener tonight. Lord, let your presence fill this room with holy peace. Let every anxious thought begin to disappear in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Let every spirit of fear, heaviness, stress, and torment leave now. Father, cover this precious child with your mercy and protection tonight. Let them feel safe in your presence. Let them know they are not alone. My beloved child, some of you listening tonight have been carrying burdens silently for a very long time. Perhaps you feel pressure from responsibilities nobody else fully understands. Perhaps your heart has grown weary from disappointment after disappointment. Perhaps you are tired of waiting for answers, tired of fighting fear, tired of trying to stay strong all the time. But hear me carefully tonight. God sees you. The Lord has not missed a single tear you have cried in secret. He has not ignored your prayers. Heaven is not silent because God has abandoned you. Sometimes God works most powerfully in the hidden places where we cannot yet see what He is preparing. Think about Joseph sitting forgotten in prison before God suddenly lifted him into purpose. Think about David hiding in caves before he became king. Think about Jesus resting in the tomb before resurrection morning came. The story was never over in the dark seasons. And your story is not over tonight either. Father, I ask you now to strengthen every weary heart listening tonight. Let hope begin to rise again where discouragement has settled deeply into the soul. Let peace replace panic. Let comfort replace fear. And maybe that is unavoidable, because every layer of scientific discovery has repeatedly shown that nature is not obligated to resemble the categories created by the human mind. The concepts of object, surface, location, and size emerged from everyday survival, not from direct access to the foundations of existence. Quantum physics forces us to confront the possibility that reality itself may operate according to principles fundamentally different from ordinary intuition. In some sense, the electron teaches intellectual humility. It reminds us that beneath the familiar world lies a deeper order that may never become fully visualizable in human terms. Mathematics reaches where intuition fails. Equations continue functioning even when imagination collapses. The electron does not care whether its existence feels emotionally comprehensible to human beings. It simply behaves according to the structure of the universe itself. And still, despite all this abstraction, the electron remains intimately woven into every moment of ordinary life. The glow of city lights depends on electrons moving through metal lattices. The warmth of sunlight touching your skin tonight depends on electrons inside atoms absorbing and emitting photons. The chemistry allowing your heart to beat, your lungs to breathe, and your neurons to fire all arises from the quantum behavior of electrons exchanging energy inside molecules. Even consciousness itself, whatever its deepest nature may be, unfolds through biological processes shaped continuously by electron interactions. The strange quantum entity with no detectable size participates in every thought you have ever experienced. That realization creates a beautiful tension at the heart of modern physics. The electron is both deeply alien and profoundly intimate. It belongs simultaneously to the furthest reaches of theoretical abstraction and to the immediate physical processes sustaining your body at this very moment. It is hidden beneath scales too small to imagine, yet its behavior defines the visible world around you constantly. And perhaps that duality explains why the electron feels almost philosophical rather than merely scientific. Because once you truly absorb what modern physics is saying, the implications spread far beyond laboratories and equations. The electron quietly undermines ancient assumptions about what existence means. It suggests that the deepest layers of reality may not consist of things at all in the ordinary sense, but of structured relationships emerging from invisible fields and interactions. The universe begins resembling music more than machinery, patterns more than particles, vibrations more than objects. And somewhere inside the silence between those vibrations, another mystery begins waiting patiently for future generations to uncover. As physics moved deeper into the quantum age, scientists slowly realized that the electron was not simply another particle waiting to be categorized alongside the familiar objects of classical reality. It had become something more unsettling, a kind of mirror reflecting the limitations of human thought itself. Every attempt to pin the electron down completely seemed to dissolve into paradox. Whenever physicists treated it like a tiny object, the mathematics broke apart. Whenever they treated it purely like a wave, experiments still revealed localized impacts behaving particle-like. The electron existed in a strange territory between categories, forcing science to invent entirely new ways of describing reality. And perhaps what makes this story so mesmerizing is that none of these discoveries were philosophical guesses. They emerged from careful measurements, repeated experiments, and astonishingly precise predictions tested again and again across decades. The electron did not become mysterious because scientists wanted mystery. It became mysterious because nature itself refused to behave according to simpler expectations. This tension between precision and incomprehensibility lies at the heart of modern physics. On one hand, humanity can predict electron behavior with extraordinary accuracy. Entire industries depend on those predictions functioning perfectly. Quantum mechanics and quantum field theory work so reliably that modern civilization itself rests upon them. Yet emotionally, intuitively, many aspects of the electron remain deeply alien to ordinary understanding. We can calculate its behavior far more easily than we can truly imagine what it is. And maybe that reveals something profound about the universe. Perhaps understanding does not always mean visualization. For most of human history, knowledge depended on mental pictures. People understood rivers because they could see water flowing. They understood planetary motion by imagining spheres moving through space. Even atoms were initially visualized as miniature solar systems because the mind desperately searches for familiar analogies. But the electron marks a point where analogy begins failing completely. Beneath certain scales, the universe stops resembling the visible world. Human imagination reaches its natural boundary. This becomes especially clear when considering what it means for the electron to possess no measurable size. In ordinary life, size defines individuality. A mountain occupies one region of space. A tree occupies another. Objects remain separate because they possess boundaries. But quantum entities behave differently. Electrons are fundamentally indistinguishable from one another. If two electrons exchange places, the universe remains physically unchanged. There is no hidden label differentiating them. No tiny marks or structures making one uniquely itself. Every electron in existence appears to be the exact same excitation repeating throughout the cosmos. This idea is so strange that even language struggles to express it properly. Imagine taking 2 grains of sand and swapping them. Nothing meaningful changes because the grains are similar enough for practical purposes. But at deeper levels, the grains still possess unique arrangements of atoms and microscopic imperfections. They remain distinguishable objects in principle. Electrons are not like that. Quantum theory treats them as perfectly identical at the deepest measurable level. Not approximately identical, absolutely identical. It is almost as though the universe contains one underlying electron pattern echoed endlessly across spacetime. And beneath this realization lurks another astonishing possibility. If particles are merely excitations of fields, then perhaps separateness itself is less fundamental than human beings instinctively believe. The classical worldview imagined isolated objects interacting externally across empty space. Quantum fields suggest a more unified picture. The fields themselves permeate the entire universe continuously. What appear to us as individual particles may simply be localized ripples emerging temporarily from deeper underlying structures extending everywhere at once. In this sense, the electron is not a tiny object traveling through reality. It is reality vibrating locally in a specific way, and suddenly, the universe begins feeling less fragmented. Matter, energy, radiation, and empty space no longer appear as entirely separate categories. Everything becomes interconnected through invisible fields woven continuously across spacetime itself. The boundaries between things begin softening. What we perceive as solid independent objects may ultimately emerge from deeper patterns of interaction occurring beneath direct perception. This shift in perspective transforms even the meaning of emptiness. Ancient philosophers imagined the void as pure nothingness, a complete absence where no existence remained. But quantum physics revealed that true emptiness may not exist at all. Even the vacuum contains fluctuating fields and transient virtual particles. Space itself possesses structure and activity. Reality never fully becomes silent. And within this restless quantum ocean, the electron appears almost like a stable note resonating through invisible cosmic music. That image may sound poetic, but it captures something surprisingly close to modern physics. Fundamental particles increasingly resemble stable vibrational patterns rather than miniature mechanical objects. The universe behaves less like a machine assembled from parts and more like an evolving symphony of interacting fields. Perhaps that is why the electron feels strangely beautiful despite its abstraction. It reveals that beneath ordinary appearances lies a deeper elegance hidden from direct human senses. The visible world of tables, mountains, oceans, and stars emerges from invisible quantum relationships unfolding silently underneath everything we experience. Reality possesses layers, and the electron became one of humanity's first glimpses into those deeper foundations. Yet even now, after more than a century of exploration, enormous mysteries remain unresolved. Physicists still do not know why fundamental particles possess the masses they do. They do not know why quantum fields exist in their particular forms. They do not know whether deeper layers beneath current physics remain hidden beyond our experiments. The electron sits at the center of these unanswered questions like a quiet doorway leading further inward. And perhaps there is something comforting about that. In an age where science often appears cold or mechanical, the electron reminds us that mystery still survives at the heart of reality. The deeper humanity explores existence, the more astonishing the universe becomes. Not less mysterious. More. Tonight, somewhere beyond your walls, starlight is crossing unimaginable distances through the darkness between galaxies. Inside those distant stars, electrons are shifting between energy levels, emitting photons into space. Some of those photons may travel for millions of years before reaching another world. Some may never arrive anywhere at all. And yet the same strange quantum entities participating inside those remote stars are also flowing through the neurons of your brain right now, helping shape your thoughts as you listen quietly in the dark. The electron connects the smallest scales of existence to the largest structures in the cosmos. A point like quantum excitation with no measurable surface helping build galaxies, stars, oceans, memories, civilizations, and consciousness itself. And still, beneath all our equations and experiments, it continues whispering the same unsettling truth. Reality is stranger than intuition ever imagined. If there is one final lesson hidden inside the mystery of the electron, it may be this: the universe is under no obligation to be built from things we can comfortably imagine. Human beings often assume that deeper understanding should make reality feel simpler, clearer, more intuitive. But modern physics has revealed almost the opposite. The closer we move toward the foundations of existence, the further reality drifts from ordinary human experience. And the electron stands at the center of that revelation like a quiet guide leading us beyond the limits of familiar thought. For centuries, philosophers and scientists searched for the ultimate building blocks of matter. Ancient thinkers imagined indivisible atoms moving through empty space. Later generations replaced those atoms with electrons, nuclei, quarks, and quantum fields. At every stage, humanity hoped the next layer downward would finally reveal the stable foundation beneath reality. Yet each discovery only opened another doorway into deeper mystery. The electron became especially important because it was one of the first entities forcing physicists to abandon the idea that nature must ultimately resemble tiny mechanical objects. It refused to behave like a miniature sphere. It refused to reveal internal structure. It behaved as both wave and particle depending on the situation. Its measurable properties emerged through quantum interactions rather than rigid classical boundaries. And even after a century of experiments, the question of what the electron really is remains surprisingly difficult to answer in ordinary language. Perhaps that difficulty itself contains meaning, because language evolved for survival inside the visible world. Human speech developed to describe animals, weather, landscapes, movement, danger, and physical objects encountered directly through the senses. Words like shape, size, location, and surface feel natural because they belong to the scale where human beings evolved. But quantum reality lies far beyond that evolutionary horizon. The electron exists in a realm where intuition no longer maps cleanly onto nature. And still, despite this alienness, the electron is not abstract in the way many people imagine. It is not merely a mathematical curiosity hidden inside equations. It participates directly in every structure around you. The stability of atoms depends on it. Chemistry depends on it. Light itself interacts constantly with electrons inside matter. Every texture your hands have ever touched emerged from electromagnetic interactions shaped by electrons. The visible world feels ordinary only because the quantum world beneath it behaves with extraordinary consistency. In some sense, the entire universe you experience is a large-scale echo of electron behavior. And this creates a beautiful paradox. The electron may be impossible to picture clearly, yet it helps create the very consciousness attempting to picture it. Human brains themselves rely on electron interactions unfolding through biological molecules. Fear begins to lose its grip. Heavy thoughts begin to quiet down. The exhausted heart starts to remember that God is still in control. So breathe deeply now. Let every breath draw you deeper into peace. Let your body soften against the bed. Let the tension leave your shoulders, your chest, your mind. Feel the calmness of heaven surrounding this room tonight. Father in heaven, I pray over every person listening to this prayer right now. Lord, some of your children are carrying invisible burdens. Some are emotionally exhausted from battles nobody else knows about. Some are lying awake because fear keeps replaying inside their minds. Some are discouraged because prayers have not yet been answered. But Father, tonight I ask you to let your peace fall over them like gentle rain in the middle of the night. Let every anxious thought become quiet in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Let every heavy spirit leave this room. Let your Holy Spirit bring comfort, healing, and rest to every listener tonight. My dear child, one of the enemy's greatest tactics is to convince weary hearts that God is distant. But Scripture tells us something very different. James 4 verse 8 says, "Draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you." Tonight, as you listen quietly in the stillness, the Lord is drawing near to your heart. He is not waiting for you to become perfect before he comforts you. He is not standing far away from your pain. He is near right now, beside you in this room, surrounding you with mercy and compassion. The same Jesus who calms storms with a single word is speaking peace over your life tonight. The same shepherd who carried lost sheep home on his shoulders is carrying you through this difficult season. Father, I ask you now to touch every wounded heart listening tonight. Heal the places inside them where fear has settled. Heal memories that still bring pain. Heal disappointments that have caused their faith to grow weak and tired. Lord, restore hope where hopelessness has taken root. Let every listener feel the warmth of your love surrounding them now. My beloved child, there are moments in life when the road ahead feels uncertain. We wonder how things will work out. We fear what tomorrow might bring. We replay conversations and imagine worst-case scenarios late into the night. But tonight, the Lord is reminding you that your future is already safely in His hands. Proverbs 3 verse 5 says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding." You do not have to understand everything tonight in order to rest. You do not need every answer before sleep comes. You simply need to trust the one who already sees the end from the beginning. God knows what tomorrow holds. He already knows the doors He will open. He already knows the strength He will provide. He already knows the miracle that is being prepared for you. So let your soul stop striving tonight. Let your heart rest in His faithfulness. Father, I pray now for supernatural peace over every anxious mind. Let every racing thought slow down. Let every fearful imagination lose its power. Let your presence flow gently through every room listening tonight. Place angels around every home. Guard every family member through the night. Protect them from darkness, nightmares, fear, and spiritual attacks. Let this atmosphere become holy ground filled with the calmness and safety of heaven. My child, remember this tonight. You are not forgotten by God. Even when heaven feels quiet, the Lord is still working behind the scenes of your life. Some miracles happen suddenly. Others grow slowly beneath the surface while God prepares the right timing. But in every season, the Lord remains faithful. Romans 8 verses 38 to 39 reminds us that nothing can separate us from the love of God. Not fear, not failure, not uncertainty, not even the darkest night. You are deeply loved by the Father tonight. His eyes remain upon you while you rest. His hand remains over your life while you sleep. And His peace is available to you right now in this very moment. So let your breathing become slower now. Let your eyes grow heavier. Let every burden drift quietly into the hands of Jesus Christ. Feel His peace surrounding your soul like warm light in the darkness. Feel His presence calming your spirit. Feel His love carrying you safely into rest tonight. And if you are still listening to this prayer, type 14 in the comments below as a declaration that you are trusting the Lord with every fear and every unanswered question. Let your comment become an act of faith before heaven tonight. Reality may not possess definite properties independent of interaction in the way common sense assumes. At quantum scales, observation and existence become strangely entangled. The electron does not always behave as though it carries a perfectly defined position waiting to be revealed. Instead, quantum mechanics often describes possibilities that collapse into measurable outcomes only during interaction. This idea disturbed even many of the scientists who helped create quantum theory. Niels Bohr accepted the strange probabilistic nature of quantum mechanics more readily than Einstein did. Werner Heisenberg argued that reality itself may not contain precise hidden values beneath uncertainty. Erwin Schrödinger, despite developing wave mechanics, became deeply uncomfortable with the philosophical implications of his own equations. The founders of quantum theory were not calmly celebrating the death of classical intuition. Many of them felt profoundly unsettled by it, and perhaps they should have been, because the electron quietly undermines some of humanity's oldest assumptions about existence itself. In ordinary experience, we imagine the world composed of stable objects possessing continuous identities through time. A rock remains a rock whether anyone observes it or not. A tree stands in the forest independent of measurement. But quantum entities refuse to fit comfortably into that framework. The electron behaves less like a tiny object carrying hidden certainty and more like a probability structure emerging through interaction. And yet, despite all this uncertainty, the universe remains astonishingly stable. Atoms do not randomly dissolve into chaos. Stars burn predictably for billions of years. Chemistry follows consistent rules across the cosmos. Somehow, beneath the strange fluidity of quantum behavior, nature still generates large-scale order with extraordinary reliability. The visible world emerges from invisible uncertainty without collapsing into randomness. That may be one of the deepest miracles hidden inside physics. The universe balances mystery and stability simultaneously. Quantum mechanics appears probabilistic at microscopic scales, yet enormous structures emerge from those probabilities with breathtaking consistency. Galaxies form, planets orbit stars, biological life evolves, consciousness awakens, all of it built upon quantum foundations so strange that even the language used to describe them begins breaking apart. And still, the electron continues behaving exactly as the equations predict. This reliability becomes especially haunting when we remember how utterly tiny the electron scale truly is. Human beings live at a middle layer of reality. We are enormous compared to atoms, yet microscopic compared to stars and galaxies. The scales where electrons operate remain profoundly distant from direct experience. If an atom were expanded to the size of a city, the electron's measurable upper limit would still be vastly smaller than a grain of dust drifting through that city's atmosphere. The true scales involved slip beyond imagination almost immediately. Yet despite this unimaginable smallness, the electron shapes everything visible around us. Without electrons, there would be no stable atoms because negatively charged electrons balance positively charged nuclei. Without that balance, chemistry could not exist. Molecules could not form. Water would not exist. Carbon chains could not stabilize into biological structures. Every living cell depends on electrons flowing continuously through molecular systems. Even the light arriving from distant stars depends on electrons shifting between energy states inside atoms. The universe we experience is inseparable from electron behavior. And perhaps that realization changes how we should think about scale itself. Human intuition often assumes that importance belongs to large things. Mountains feel significant because they tower above landscapes. Galaxies feel grand because they stretch across unimaginable distances. But the electron reveals a different kind of importance, one unrelated to physical size. Something may possess almost no measurable extent at all while still shaping the architecture of the cosmos. The smallest known scales participate in the largest known structures. Tiny quantum excitations influence the evolution of stars, planets, ecosystems, civilizations, and minds. The electron connects the microscopic and the cosmic in ways difficult to emotionally absorb. It is one of the quiet threads weaving reality together across every level of existence. And perhaps there is comfort hidden inside that idea too, because modern life often makes the universe feel cold and mechanical, as though science has stripped mystery away from reality. But the electron suggests almost the opposite. The deeper science explores existence, the stranger and more wondrous reality becomes. Beneath the familiar world lies an invisible ocean of quantum fields fluctuating softly through spacetime. Matter itself emerges from interactions more subtle than ancient philosophers could ever have imagined. Even emptiness hums with hidden activity. The universe is not dead machinery. It is dynamic, relational, layered with hidden structure and unanswered questions. Tonight, while cities sleep beneath artificial light and distant galaxies drift silently through expanding space, electrons continue moving through atoms everywhere in the cosmos. Inside stars, inside oceans, inside your own body, point-like quantum excitations carrying no measurable surface while helping generate every visible structure surrounding us. And perhaps that is why the electron remains so captivating even after all these years. Because it reminds humanity that beneath ordinary appearances, reality is still filled with mysteries waiting quietly in the dark. There is a quiet irony hidden inside the story of the electron. Humanity began this journey searching for smaller and smaller pieces of matter, hoping to uncover the ultimate building blocks of the universe. But the deeper science traveled, the less those building blocks resembled objects at all. Instead of solid miniature particles hidden beneath atoms, physicists encountered probability waves, quantum fields, vacuum fluctuations, and mathematical symmetries operating beneath ordinary perception. The electron did not reveal a tiny machine inside reality. It revealed that reality itself may be far stranger than the human mind was ever designed to intuitively understand. And perhaps nowhere does this become clearer than when we consider time itself. In ordinary life, objects feel continuous. A stone remains itself from one moment to the next. A river flows gradually. Planet orbits steadily through space. But quantum entities exist in a far less straightforward way. The electron's interactions unfold through probabilities distributed across spacetime. Virtual particles continuously appear and disappear around it. Quantum fluctuations ripple endlessly beneath its measurable properties. Even the vacuum surrounding the electron is alive with temporary processes too brief for direct perception. The deeper we descend, the less static reality becomes. Existence starts resembling an ongoing process rather than a collection of permanent things. This perspective changes how physicists think about matter itself. In classical intuition, matter feels substantial because it seems composed of stable physical substance. But quantum field theory suggests substance may emerge from persistent patterns of interaction rather than solid material cores. The electron's apparent permanence arises not because it contains tiny rigid components holding it together internally, but because the underlying quantum field supporting it obeys stable mathematical laws. The electron is stable because the universe allows that particular excitation to exist consistently. And this idea reaches astonishingly far beyond particle physics. Modern cosmology now describes the early universe itself through quantum fields. Moments after the Big Bang, the cosmos may have existed as an unimaginably hot sea of fluctuating fields before particles condensed into stable forms as space expanded and cooled. Galaxies, stars, planets, oceans, and living organisms eventually emerged from those early quantum conditions. In a very real sense, the visible universe grew out of invisible fluctuations hidden beneath spacetime itself. The electron therefore connects not only to atoms and chemistry, but to cosmic history. Every electron inside your body tonight may have participated in countless transformations across billions of years. Some were likely forged in ancient stars long before Earth existed. Others emerged through energetic processes in the early universe itself. Electrons move through matter continuously, exchanging positions invisibly throughout chemistry and biology. The electrons participating in your thoughts today are not permanent possessions belonging uniquely to you. They are ancient participants in a cosmic process unfolding across time. There is something strangely peaceful about that realization. The boundaries separating self from universe become softer under quantum physics. The matter composing your body was once scattered through stars, oceans, interstellar clouds, and ancient planetary systems. The electrons flowing through your nervous system tonight may once have moved through entirely different structures millions or billions of years ago. Reality is not static ownership. It is participation. And perhaps that idea helps explain why the electron story feels emotionally different from ordinary scientific facts. This is not merely a technical discussion about microscopic particles. It becomes a meditation on the nature of existence itself. The electron quietly dissolves rigid categories humanity once took for granted. Matter and energy blur together. Empty space reveals hidden activity. Objects become excitations of fields. Identity softens into indistinguishable quantum patterns. Even solidity emerges from invisible interactions rather than hard substance. The universe begins feeling less like architecture and more like music. Stable patterns resonate through invisible fields the way harmonies emerge through vibrating air. Different particles resemble different notes within an immense cosmic symphony extending across spacetime. Electrons, photons, quarks, and neutrinos each represent distinct excitations allowed by the deeper mathematical structure of reality. And just as music cannot be reduced to isolated atoms of sound without losing its meaning, perhaps the universe itself cannot fully be understood through isolated objects alone. Relationships may be more fundamental than things. This possibility sits quietly beneath much of modern physics. Quantum entanglement already demonstrates that particles can become correlated across vast distances in ways classical intuition struggles to explain. Fields permeate all of space continuously rather than existing as isolated fragments. Symmetry principles govern interactions at the deepest levels. Again and again, reality appears woven together more intimately than older mechanical pictures ever suggested. And still, despite all this philosophical depth, the electron remains experimentally grounded. Every statement about its behavior emerges from careful observation and measurement. Science did not invent this strangeness. Nature revealed it. The equations succeeded because experiments forced physicists to abandon simpler assumptions. Reality itself became the teacher guiding humanity beyond intuition. That process is still continuing today. New experiments search constantly for tiny deviations from current theories. Physicists probe deeper into vacuum structure, dark matter, neutrino behavior, and high-energy particle interactions, hoping to uncover clues pointing beyond existing models. The electron may yet reveal hidden surprises beneath present understanding. History repeatedly warns against assuming current theories are final. Every generation believes it stands near completion just before new discoveries transform the landscape again. Perhaps future civilizations will eventually uncover structures beneath quantum fields, just as modern physics uncovered structures beneath atoms. Or perhaps the electron truly marks a foundational limit where the universe stops dividing into smaller parts entirely. Tonight, humanity does not yet know. And maybe there is beauty in that uncertainty too. The universe remains alive with unanswered questions. Beneath every solved mystery waits another deeper one. The electron, tiny and seemingly dimensionless, opened an entire doorway into the hidden architecture of existence. And even now that doorway remains only partially explored. Outside your window tonight, stars continue burning across immense distances. Inside those stars, electrons dance through plasma hotter than imagination can comfortably hold. Across empty interstellar darkness, invisible quantum fields continue fluctuating silently beneath the vacuum. And within your own body, ancient electrons move through molecules helping sustain thought, memory, breath, and awareness. Tiny point-like excitations participating in the long unfolding story of the cosmos. A mystery without measurable size helping shape everything we know. And now, as our journey slowly begins to settle into silence, it is worth returning to the question that first brought us here tonight. What is the true scale of an electron? At the beginning, the question sounded simple, almost innocent. We imagined that somewhere inside physics there must exist a hidden number, a tiny radius waiting patiently to be measured. But the deeper we traveled into the quantum world, the more the question itself began to transform. Because the electron does not behave like an ordinary object. It does not possess a detectable surface. It does not reveal internal structure. It appears instead as a localized excitation emerging from invisible fields woven throughout spacetime itself. And perhaps that means the true scale of an electron cannot be captured by distance alone. Maybe its real scale is measured through influence. After all, despite its apparent lack of measurable size, the electron shapes nearly every visible structure in the universe. It governs chemistry. It stabilizes atoms. It allows molecules to form. It carries electricity through nervous systems and stars alike. It helps generate light, magnetism, biological life, memory, thought, and technology. Tiny quantum excitations with no measurable surface participate in everything familiar to human existence. The electron may be physically point-like, yet its consequences stretch across the cosmos. There is something deeply beautiful about that contradiction. Humanity often associates greatness with physical magnitude. Mountains inspire awe because they tower above landscapes. Galaxies overwhelm us because they span unimaginable distances. But the electron reveals another kind of grandeur entirely. Something can possess almost no measurable extent while still shaping the architecture of reality itself. Perhaps existence is not fundamentally about size. Perhaps it is about relationship. The electron matters not because it occupies space like a classical object, but because of how it interacts. Reality at its deepest levels may be woven from interactions more than from isolated things. Quantum fields ripple together continuously beneath the visible universe, creating stable patterns that eventually emerge as stars, oceans, forests, living creatures, and conscious minds. Matter becomes less like tiny solid bricks and more like harmonies resonating through invisible structures hidden beneath spacetime. And tonight, somewhere far beyond Earth, those harmonies continue unfolding. Inside distant galaxies, electrons are shifting between energy levels in ancient stars. In cold nebulae drifting through interstellar darkness, atoms are forming quietly beneath faint starlight. Across the vacuum between galaxies, quantum fields fluctuate endlessly in silence. The universe hums softly with invisible activity whether human beings observe it or not. Yet somehow, through an extraordinary chain of events stretching across cosmic history, the same quantum processes also gave rise to consciousness capable of wondering about itself. That may be the strangest fact of all. The universe became aware enough to question the foundations of its own existence through arrangements of atoms built from electrons that may not even possess measurable size. Tiny point-like excitations helped create brains capable of mathematics, philosophy, imagination, and wonder. Through human thought, the cosmos slowly turned inward and began examining the invisible patterns beneath its own surface. And even now, after centuries of science, mystery still remains. We still do not know whether quantum field theory represents the deepest layer of reality or merely another step towards something further beneath. We still do not understand why the universe possesses the fields and constants it does. We still cannot fully reconcile gravity with quantum mechanics. The electron opened the doorway into the quantum world, but the deeper regions beyond that doorway remain only partially illuminated. Perhaps they always will, because every answer humanity discovers seems to reveal another horizon waiting further ahead. Science is not the destruction of mystery. It is the expansion of mystery into deeper and more beautiful forms. The electron did not reduce the universe to cold machinery. It revealed a cosmos far stranger, more subtle, and more interconnected than earlier generations could ever have imagined. And maybe that is the quiet emotional truth hidden beneath all these equations and experiments. Reality is not empty. It is alive with hidden structure. Beneath the ordinary world lies an invisible ocean of quantum fields trembling softly through spacetime. Beneath certainty lies probability. Beneath solid matter lies dynamic interaction. Beneath emptiness lies fluctuation and motion. And beneath every familiar object lies an ancient quantum mystery still unfolding silently in the dark. So tonight, as your breathing slows and the world around you grows quieter, imagine for a moment the unimaginable scale hidden inside your own existence. Inside every atom of your body, electrons continue their silent quantum dance. Point-like excitations without measurable surfaces helping sustain the chemistry of life. Ancient participants in a cosmic process stretching back toward the earliest moments of the universe itself. The same electrons that illuminate stars. The same electrons that travel through distant galaxies. The same electrons that helped shape oceans, forests, storms, civilizations, and dreams, all flowing quietly through you now. And perhaps the final lesson of the electron is not merely scientific, but deeply humbling. The universe does not need to resemble human intuition in order to be real. Nature is under no obligation to fit comfortably inside the categories evolved by the human mind. Yet despite this strangeness, despite the unimaginable scales and invisible fields and quantum paradoxes, the cosmos still produces beauty, still produces order, still produces awareness capable of listening softly in the night and wondering about the hidden architecture beneath existence itself. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of ordinary thought, the quantum fields continue humming endlessly through the darkness. Quiet, invisible, infinite,